So this presentation will give you an overview of the local nature recovery strategy, which this one is actually focused around freshwater and marine and coastal aspects of this strategy. So trying to make it as relevant to you guys as possible. We will keep that information as sort of as correct and as relevant as possible through this presentation. So to give you a little bit of background, what are the local nature recovery strategies? So they are a legal requirement and have been brought in by the 2021 Environment Act. And there are 48 of them happening across England. And we are one of them, which is being, well, they're all locally developed by an appointed responsible authority. So the one for Kent and Medway is being developed by Kent County Council. But it is being collaboratively developed. So we're bringing in all sorts of people from various backgrounds and expertise and groups and organisations who will be able to develop this alongside us. And it will be landscape scale as well. So we will be looking at a variety of different landscapes, and obviously our rivers and our coastal environments as well will be included in those landscapes, to bring together priorities for nature and to deliver wider environmental benefits from residents, businesses and organisations. So we'll be identifying actions for nature recovery that will be considered in local plans and policy as well. So a little bit of a lovely infographic here from the Kent Biodiversity Strategy. So what makes Kent so special? So there's a lot of things highlighted on this presentation slide here, and obviously a lot of it can be found online in the strategy. But I just wanted to point out a few sort of relevant facts as well, that 85% of the 200 UK chalk rivers are actually in the south and southeast of England. So we've got quite a few chalk streams and rivers here in Kent that we hope to include in the strategies. We also have 16% of England's saline lagoons, which contain rare invertebrates and provide habitats for a wide variety of marine flora and avian species. We also have quite a large amount of vegetated shingle, particularly in the area of Dungeness, where 1/3 of the UK's plant species are actually found here. And North Kent's coast is a network of SPAs, which are special protected areas, which are nationally important for wintering migrant birds as well. So a couple of nature recovery wins for Kent since 2000. So it's, although we're saying we want to recover nature, it's not all doom and gloom, because things are happening. There are really lovely wins that have been happening. For example, the sand lizard reintroduction established population in Kent between 2004 and 2006. And we had Little Tern fledged at Castle Coote area of South Wales Reserve for the first time in 15 years. We've also had 5 additional marine conservation zones established in Kent in 2019, which now brings the total to 11, which is quite a nice number. So why is the Nature Recovery Network relevant to you? So firstly, we will be investigating or looking at different threats and pressures that we have on nature. So a lot of the threats and pressures are listed here. So water scarcity is obviously an issue. We're really sort of a water scarce region down here in Kent, and those effects are only going to get worse due to climate change. So we'll have to look into ways of how we'll be able to deal with that and future-proof that. Flooding is also another issue, which seems completely sort of the opposite end of the scale, where we have we're having much wetter winters, and flooding is becoming an issue because of that. Poor water quality, intensive land management, habitat fragmentation, and obviously climate change as well being sort of an overall threat and pressure to everything we have. So the inputs we'll be looking at will be things like we'll be looking at nature-based solutions. We'll be joining up actions to protect and restore rivers and catchments. So we'll be looking at things holistically and as one big joint up area to try and protect, rather than looking at sort of little individual segments. And obviously we'll be asking for an adequate representation and input from a variety of different people and organisations as well. So we want everyone to have their say in how they think that nature should be recovered. So it's a little bit of information from about our project programme. So currently we're mapping areas of particular importance for biodiversity. So this is looking at areas that are already sort of protected under things like SSSIs, SPAs, and also mapping areas where nature recovery action has already been taken. We will then be taking this and towards our workshops, which will be happening towards the end of this month and through February, and we'll be looking at those priorities and potential measures, as well as sort of species priorities at these workshops. So that's where we ask for a lot of input from you guys, from our stakeholders, and our engagement groups to come together, and we'll discuss sort of what priorities we think we should focus on for the LNRS. So as well as that, we're sort of sending out surveys for people as well to fill in. So if people can't make the workshops, there are plenty of opportunities for them to be able to have their say and express their opinions on what their priorities should be. We'll then take those away. We'll look at areas that we could add to our maps currently, and then we'll be taking those back out and sort of shortening that list. So we'll be creating a long list to begin with, shortening it down, and working on ways on how we can add that to our strategy. And obviously later on, sort of later 2024 and into 2025, it'll be going out to public consultation and then publication of the strategy as well. So this is actually taken from the Marine Conservation Society website. It's a little bit of sort of marine kind of focused or coastal focused area, really. So what we're mapping, we've started to map ourselves, are these areas of particular importance for biodiversity, with the acronym APIBs. You might see popping up every now and again if we're using that. So obviously we've got local wildlife sites mapped on that, national nature reserves, marine protected areas, sites of special scientific interest, marine conservation zones as well. We'll also be looking at irreplaceable habitats, which are defined by the biodiversity net gain list. They can be seen here on the slide. They include things completely unrelated to coastal sites such as ancient woodland, but we'll be looking at things like limestone pavements, coastal sand dunes, and salt marsh scrub and lowland fens as well. So there's a quite nice mosaic of habitats that will be mapped as part of these APIBs on our map. So this is where we want you guys to come in and influence the LNRS. So we'll be looking at things to influence why. So we'll be looking at the pressures, the threats, the challenges and opportunities. We'll be identifying the key issues that the LNRS needs to address, and then the opportunities that can bring in for us to be able to work together to come out with some opportunities to be able to address these issues. So these will be happening, as I mentioned before, in our workshops. We'll be coming up with our priorities long lists. So we'll be looking at sort of the wish lists informed by the threats and the opportunities. So what's threatened, what do we want to try and help recover, and looking at methods of being able to do that. We then take the almighty long list and shorten it down really to be able to focus our attention and our resources on real prioritized species and habitats to be able to deliver the greatest benefits that we can. And then those will influence the sort of potential measures. So that will come into that sort of the mapping, more online surveys and more engagement work. And then that will come out into the areas, mapping the areas that could become important for biodiversity. So we're looking at these that aren't currently mapped or won't be currently mapped in the areas that are important for biodiversity, but looking at areas that have potential. So these are some dates here for our workshops. If you've not already signed up to them, please do, because we do welcome input from people from all organisations everywhere across Kent who can have some sort of representative of their opinions. So the dates are up here, but obviously you can see them on our website as well, and you can book on through our website. It takes you to an Eventbrite link where you can book through there. They're obviously completely free to join. Obviously, if you can't spare a full day, because these workshops will be running for an entire day, please do join for just a morning or an afternoon. And we are putting our agenda out on our website soon, actually, so you'll be able to see the exact agenda for these workshops, and maybe you guys can decide where might be more relevant for you to fit in. Obviously, if you can make the full day, please do. It would be really useful for us to have your input there. So this is sort of a basic outline of our workshop agenda as well. So obviously the 3 key things that we'll be looking at in our workshops will be identifying the pressures and the threats to species and habitats. Then we'll be looking at the opportunities for actions for nature recovery, and then the outcomes people would like to see in respect of the nature recovery. So those are sort of our 3 kind of key agenda items here that we'll be hoping to achieve in our first set of workshops. And I'm going to hand over this lovely, complicated looking graph to Catty now.
So one of the questions that is quite key or that gets asked a lot is how this is going to be different or fit into all the other plans. And we've made an attempt to try and place the local nature recovery strategy within all the other plans and strategies that are already there or that are coming online. The problem with this is that we don't actually know all the details of this yet. And while we know that a lot of the plans like river basin management plans, surface water management plans, WFD drivers are meant to include or refer back to the local nature recovery strategies or inform that. How exactly that's going to work is something that's still going to be defined a little bit more. So it's something that the Environment Agency, I think, is just trying to work out themselves at the moment. And we've got them on the steering group for the local nature recovery strategy. So that's something that will basically work in over the next year. One thing that we do know is that the local plans will have to take account of the local nature recovery strategy. So there is a clearer link to how they will be developed in the future in terms of having to have regard of what the local nature recovery strategy does. It's also meant to influence ELMS to some extent and BNG by giving it a different significance if a site is within the local nature recovery strategy. But again, the details of that aren't that clear yet. Louise, do you mind going on to the next bit? Yes, this is the summary. Cool. Let's move on. So what we'll end up with is a spatially framed strategy. So something that is that's geographically explicit, that brings together priorities from different stakeholders. And so that's why obviously we've invited you to this today and would really like you to come to the workshops. We want this to be a plan, or it needs to be a plan that that combines, that's basically the sort of one-stop shop for all our spatial requirements. It's going to identify locations where we think action for nature is a priority and what that action should look like. And it'll then help us link to mechanisms and funding opportunities. So there isn't funding directly associated with the local nature recovery network, but that's why it's really important to identify these other links that are there. And ultimately, that's meant to help us deliver everything that you see on the right of that slide. So a network of well-leveraged places, restored and healthy natural environment, etc., etc. Cool. Thanks, Louise. So Louise has kind of gone through this already, but just a quick reminder of what the steps are that we're looking for in the next year, basically. So at the moment, we're mapping these areas that are already of particular importance. So that's very explicitly said by DEFRA what they want us to look at for that. So there isn't much room for movement for us. The next step is then step 2, mapping areas where action for nature recovery has been taken already. So that's something that we're basically starting to collect now, is where have projects happened across the county already that have made a difference. And we're KWT on behalf of KCC is developing an app that is meant to collate that information. We're just trying to work out how existing partnerships that are already collecting that are going to be able to feed into that in a sort of more straightforward way. So catchment partnerships, for example, that I think a lot of you will have had input to, are going to try and basically move a lot of that collected information over already. Step 3 is describing the strategy area and the biodiversity opportunities for recovery. So that first long list of species as well. So the strategy area description is being developed at the moment with the help of a stakeholder group that we'll show you a little bit more about later. And then we're looking at step 5 and 4. So mapping areas that could become of particular importance going forward. So where do we think we should focus our action? And what are the priorities? So why do we think those areas are particularly important? And what are the measures that we could take there? And then ultimately what we'll end up with is a habitat map and an associated statement of priorities. And that's what the local nature recovery strategy is. So KCC are the responsible authority for developing this, and we've got statutory guidance that is setting out how that needs to happen, but this is meant to be evidence-based. So that, again, that's why we're asking for data from local organizations or any sort of input that you can give, and meant to be collaborative. So obviously there's a huge resource requirement for everyone, but we're quite hopeful that it's something that will ultimately be useful for everyone. So it's something that should really bring all of these different organizations together that that in some way influence spatial action in Kent. And yeah, we're not, so Kent County Council isn't alone responsible for delivering it. So it's really important that we make this something that works for those different organizations, so water companies, IDBs, etc., who are out there doing a lot of this work already. So we really want to be able to feed that in, and that's what we're trying to work out, how to best do that at the moment. Cool. Thank you. So this is a little bit repeating what I've just said. So we'll identify the outcomes for nature recovery in Kent. So what are our priorities and what are the supporting actions that we need to take to deliver these outcomes that we've identified. So we'll have this long list of outcomes based on the workshops that are happening over the next month or so, and then identify what the actions are that we need to take. So first, this January-February period is giving us our wish list, and we'll go away and refine them with the different stakeholder groups that are already involved. And then in April, May, we'll have another set of workshops that will be more open, where we'll basically review what's come out of this priority list and potential measures and refine that further. And then we'll have a draft set of those ready by August, hopefully. Thanks, Louise. So the way that the LNIS is then going to be able to deliver nature recovery when there isn't any funding directly associated with it is basically through these different mechanisms that are in place, so sort of being put in place already. So local plan making is the first one. So that's where local planning authorities are really important. And we've got an officer that's full-time just engaging with that stakeholder groups to make sure that they understand what's coming and that it works for them. And they understand how to use it going down the line, and we make it something that's deliverable. Then it's meant to link to biodiversity net gain when that is sort of fully developed and when we understand how that's going to work in more detail. But that's obviously a potential funding mechanism that links to the local plans as well through ELMS. So again, it's not quite clear how that's going to work yet, but the government have indicated that they want to incentivize landowners delivering action on areas that are identified in the LNIS. There's also a slight indication that other grants and investment from the government are likely to go into that direction, but again, no clear details. Using nature-based solutions is an obvious one, where it's about bringing together different interests. So, for example, for water companies, looking at aquifer recharge, looking at natural flood management, and where priority areas for that are, that we can link to that enhancement of our priority habitats. So it needs to be collaborative again, and we need to have this as a county-wide framework, and it'll be mapped so that everyone can see what's planned where and how they can get involved with it. So ideally, that'll direct action investment to the areas that we think we really want to see more in, and direct it away from the areas where we have our most valuable assets in place already. So there's a few things just to clarify what the LNIS will and won't do. So it won't draw definitive boundaries. It won't dictate what happens on a piece of land. It's just a framework. So it won't force landowners or land managers to do anything explicitly or specific. It's just there to basically identify a priority. We won't be able to develop it without your input, or we can, but it will be useless. So please help us. And we won't publish it before a full public consultation hasn't taken place. While it's due to end in 2025, there is a review period that I think is 3 to 10 years. So it's meant to carry on going forward. And Louise has already said it's a statutory requirement in the Environment Act, so it is there to stay. So we'll basically identify areas where creation or improvement of habitat brings the biggest benefits, what potential measures we want to see, and hopefully will inform those opportunities for funding and investment. So that again is something that should be really relevant to a lot of your organizations about where could you direct some of that funding that's already in place. And yeah, we're actively seeking this input from stakeholder groups. So we've got this water focus briefing today. We've had a similar thing for businesses, for community groups and so on, and that's going to carry on. Yes, and it will be revised on a regular cycle. So the organizations here today and the other stakeholder groups that we've engaged with so far represent our future delivery partners. So it's really important, or that's why we really want you to get involved. Every organization active in Kent is likely to play some part in delivering this. So we want this strategy to be something that you can use to influence and inform your future actions and funding streams associated with them. So that might be national environment programs, that might be biodiversity strategies, or anything else that you're developing as an organization, a surface water management plan and so on, natural flood management strategies. But also you've got the underground knowledge of what's happened already, what works in the landscape that you're working in, and what will enable that action to take place. So we really want this to be something deliverable. So we want that input about actually what's going to work where, what's realistic for us to focus on, what should be a priority. any local data that's available, we'll be able to enhance the national data sets that we're working with. So we are already working with the Kent and Medway Biodiversity Record Centre, and we're working with some of the data available to the catchment-based approach. But anything else that you think we should be aware of that you want to share with us would be very welcome. So we want that to align with your own land management plans and future ambitions, and yeah, ideally for you to build that into your own long-term planning. So coming back to coastal and freshwater management, Louise has already touched on this a little bit, but yeah, the first thing is trying to help identify areas where multiple stakeholders are interested in action. So ideally somewhere where we can bring together multiple funding streams and achieve more. And we want this to, or the actions that are going to be in this nature recovery network are likely to also support a lot of these natural processes that we've been talking about in the nature-based solutions that Louise flagged earlier in terms of addressing some of the threats from climate change, water scarcity, and so on. So we want to make sure that we are including priorities for things like groundwater recharge, for natural flood management, water quality protection, etc., coastal defences. So that could include identifying priority opportunities for delivering biodiversity net gain, or especially for watercourses or associated habitats or marine net gain, and helping bring that into areas that are priorities, maybe also for drinking water protection, etc., but also highlighting opportunities for those future regulatory or voluntary work. So yeah, I've said WINUP a few times now. But thinking about things like nature-based solutions for drainage and wastewater management plans where they are appropriate, or surface water flood risk plans, coastal management plans, and so on. So basically just trying to really have one place where all of these things feed together. So obviously it won't be perfect. It's the first time we're delivering it, but we really want it to be something that helps everyone sort of see a little bit more what's there already, and that then feeds into this planning process that at the moment is a little bit more disjointed. So we've mentioned the different stakeholder groups already, but there's basically a few different advisory groups that are there. So I'm not going to read all of them out to you. It's more a slide there for reference, but we've basically got a group that looks at data, evidence, and mapping. There's a species recovery focus group. There's a landowner focus group. There's an engagement and communications focus group, and you can see who already sits on those. So this is not an exhaustive list. We've just pulled a few out that were relevant to freshwater and marine. On the board, obviously the Environment Agency and Natural England are steering this process, and the delivery group is developed through the Kent Nature Partnership. So that's a really established group that's been Dan supporting for a long time. And the supporting authorities group includes all Kent local planning authorities in Natural England. If you see any of these groups and you think a representative of your organisation should really sit on one of those, please let us know, and we can take that back and see how that would work. But yeah, this is mainly to advise you about, in this prioritization process, who are the people making the decisions. It's not just public consultation, but there's a lot of work going on between those workshop periods that we've already highlighted. And yeah, coming back to that, so there's a few dates for your diary. Again, we're doing these workshops between January and February. The dates are on the website. Please come to any of them that you can make. We're then going to start mapping out this nature recovery action that's currently happening, and there'll be more details about that coming out soon. April and May are the next set of workshops. So I think that's dates that we'll be able to share soon as well. So that's where we review those priorities and potential measures. And then going away, basically trying to come up with this map and refocus in September on the opportunity areas and basically finalizing what we think those recovery opportunities are. Cool. That is everything that we had. We'll keep the slide up just to remind you what's going on. But if you've got any questions, Louise and I are around and happy to try and answer them.